Before we jump into this episode, we'd just like to take a quick moment to reflect on the very sad news that Adam Schlesinger passed away earlier this month at the age of just 52. Schlesinger wrote the music for a number of TV shows, theatre productions, and movies, including this one, Music and Lyrics, but was probably better known for his band Fountains of Wayne, whose smash hit Stacy's Mum remains a 2000s classic to this day. His work earned him nominations for an Oscar, a Golden Globe, Grammys, and he won an Emmy last year for Outstanding Music and Lyrics in the TV musical drama Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. The premise of this film is that 80s pop star Hugh Grant has to write an extra verse to the song Way Back Into Love. So a big shout out to my talented brother Leo, who played the piano in my very own attempt to write an extra verse for this song that you can hear later in this episode. Enjoy!
Listen, I did film and television studies at university for 3 years. I spent hours reading countless books and articles on subjects spanning from film all the way to television. Not a single one mentioned Hugh Grant once.
I achieved the hardest qualification across any university or college ever, a 2-1 in history. Let me tell you, the only thing that I learned was that we, as a society, have a history of denying and neglecting Hugh Grant's artistic and cultural relevance, not just in this country, but in the entire world.
I met Oscar at a Hugh Grant-themed event I put on at the Students' Union.
It felt as though Diggory and I were the only ones there, and we agreed that there was a Hugh Grant-shaped hole in academia.
We decided to put it right ourselves. We want to show people that he's an icon in acting.
We want to show people he's more than just a bumbling posh guy.
I'm Diggory Waite.
And I'm Oscar Beardmore Gray. And this is...
Taking Hugh for Granted.
Hello and welcome to Taking Hugh for Granted, the podcast in which two friends watch every single film starring Hugh Grant and ask the simple question, is this film taking Hugh for granted? Is this film good on its own, or does it rely on the bumbling Brits for its acclaim? This week, like every week, I'm joined by Oscar. Say hello, Oscar.
Hello, Diggory and Hugh Grant fans out there.
I was thinking about this. What are we going to call our fans?
Gosh, we've touched upon this before, but we never settled on anything.
No.
We need a good fan name. We've got so many good Hugh puns, but I feel like maybe Grant is a better word for it. So like the Grantians or the
Grantians. Well, I was thinking the Hooligans.
The Hooligans. That's good. I like that.
That's good. But the problem is, there's a company called Huel who make powdered food, and they call their fans and their customers Hooligans. But or Hewlers. So I'm a bit we might have to go to war with them over who gets it. But I'm happy to wage war on bloody powdered food.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, let's stake our claim to Hooligans. I think that's quite a good one.
Okay, well, you're listening. Well, Hooligans, thank you very much for joining us yet again for another episode of Taking Hugh for Granted. This week we're talking about music and lyrics.
Diggory, I've been sitting here all morning listening to the soundtrack. I love the film so much. I'm happy to tell you. I've literally been going between the demo version and the real version of Way Back Into Love. I'm that obsessed with it.
I love it. Should we have a quick synopsis, Simon, and then get into the meat of this review?
Let's do it.
Music and Lyrics, directed by Marc Lawrence and released in 2007. Washed-up singer Alex Fletcher, played by Hugh Grant, is given a couple of days to compose a chart-topping hit for an aspiring teen sensation. Though he's never written a decent lyric in his life, he meets Sophie Fisher, played by Drew Barrymore, and sparks begin to fly, both on and off the page.
Well, what a very nice synopsis that was. Diggs, maybe we should start, as always, with the first time we see Hugh. And this is one of the best ones. The first scene in this film is fantastic. What was your initial thoughts?
Oscar, I was thinking back to some of the first scenes in films that really grab you. I was thinking of Goodfellas, when they've got the guy in the trunk of the car. I was thinking of the first scene in Inglourious Basterds where, you have the Jew hunter, played by Christoph Waltz, coming into the house and everyone's hiding under the floorboards. These classic, really big openings that just grab the audience and so they're completely enraptured. This film is no different. The most incredible 80s music video starring pop and particularly Hugh Grant in some amazing garb singing an amazing song.
Gonna lose my head, but then pop goes my heart, I
music video is more 80s than the 80s itself, I'd say. And he looks like Austin Powers, and he's got the perfect boy band look, the sort of Backstreet Boys of the 80s, if you would, like the sort of, it's not a mullet, it's just like a floppy haircut.
Just a mop.
It's just a mop, a pure mop, and exactly what you would picture Hugh Grant looking like in the 80s if he was if he was born in, like, I don't know, if he was a pop star in the 80s.
He was a pop star, yeah.
Yeah. It was absolutely on point.
I love that. I saw an interview with him in which he said that he's so happy now that he is, like, because obviously, like you're saying, you listen to the music all morning because it is an official soundtrack, and he is on Spotify as well. Hugh Grant is his own. He's an artist now, and Hugh Grant on Spotify, and he said it aroused him to know that now he's considered technically is a pop star.
Mate, and he's got 32 million plays on his top song. So that's my real question is why he wasn't chosen for A Star Is Born and put in Bradley Cooper's role, because I think he would have absolutely smashed that.
Oh my god, that would have been absolutely incredible. That would have been like that bit when he's like, hey, and then Lady Gaga turns around, she's like, what? And he's like, I just want to get another look at you. But it'd be like, hey, and she's like, what? He's like, I just wanted to catch another look at you. Sorry, you're absolutely enchanting. Off you go. Oh god, that's another great one for films
that would have been a good one
in.
for the Hunger Games. I didn't think about that one.
It really would have been. Yeah, I mean, but we can't stress enough how good that opening is and how they've just thought about like you say, it's more 80s than 80s itself. So go on YouTube, type in the opening scene, or type in what's the pop song called in that?
It is called Pop Goes My Heart.
Pop Goes My.
And pop spelled P-O capital P exclamation mark. And if you just got to think, if you guys know the song "Wake Me Up Before You Go" by Wham, it's definitely got that kind of feel to it.
Big time.
And Hugh just like bops up and down. We'll get more into the dancing and the singing at a later point, but maybe we should now move on to his everyday look in this film and his character. He's looking very cool, very chic. Yep. He's got all these like necklaces on. He has plants. Diggs, what did you think about his general look and character?
I mean, I wasn't too happy with his hair. His hair was quite. I mean, it's not the curtains that we love. It's not the like side parting thing, but it was a sort of unkempt look, which was okay, but at points I didn't think quite worked with his character. But what I did like you say, was the unbuttoned shirts exposing these really cool necklaces. I was like, bloody hell, Hugh, where did this come from? He's like, it doesn't. But I do think there was a slight disconnect between what the kind of guy he was, in the fact that like he was sort of like very happy being a has-been, didn't really like believe in himself too much, and yet sort of seems to care about his look. It seemed to be a bit of a disconnect, but it was very nice to see, because it isn't sort of a Hugh that we've seen really, at least up to this point in his career, I don't think. What did you think?
Well, I've read lots of reviews actually that compared his character in this film a little bit to About a Boy Again, and his hairstyle is of the similar look. So we're only sort of 3 or 4 years apart from his About a Boy look. He's got this very stylish look, and in some cases a sort of narcissistic character, which is won over by other people. But he also brings this comedic and self-deprecating style that we see later on in the Renaissance, which I really like. I mean, there's a moment where he talks about his solo album being crass, contrived effort and not even good enough for a dentist chair, and it sat in a shop for 6 years. It was that kind of comedy that is just classic Hugh. And really, really, I really enjoyed that part of the film, I have to say.
And his character, you're absolutely right. And once again, it's Hugh. He plays the line so straight, and that's what makes him so believable. It's exactly the same thing if you listen back to our About a Boy episode that we say there, where he plays these characters so straight, and yet they're so funny. And I think for the most part, especially Marc Lawrence's writing, because obviously they've done 4 films together now. Hugh seems to play the similar sort of role and makes these sort of one-liner sarcastic comments the whole way through, and they just bang every time. He just does it perfectly. So that was really I enjoyed that.
I mean, and while this rom-com in some senses was rather predictable, it was what you describe as a popcorn film where you just sort of put it in your mouth and eat it.
Yeah.
But we do get the sort of dark side of his character which is typical in a rom-com, the sort of fool of the film where I didn't love it when he sleeps with Sophie, the main Drew Barrymore's character, where she was sort of in a vulnerable position and then he just goes and bangs her. And you didn't love the bit where he kind of, his own insecurity and pamperedness, where he doesn't really care about the fact that his song's going to be ruined by Cora, the famous upcoming sort of Britney Spears. And he sort of sells out and doesn't stay true to his own instincts. But then, as we see at the end of the film, his redeeming qualities come back with his epic song.
Just a little bit louder, because this song is intended for humans, okay? Way Back Into Love, take 2.
I've been living with a shadow overhead. I've been sleeping with a cloud above my bed. I've been lonely for so long. Trapped in the past, I just can't seem to move on.
I've been hiding all my hopes and dreams away, just in case I ever need them again someday. I've been setting aside time to clear a little space in the corners of my mind. All I wanna do is find a way back into love. I can't make it through without a way back into love.
I think you're absolutely right when you say that this film follows some of those classic story beats, and my issue is they're no more apparent than in Marc Lawrence's films. You'll see that with the rewrite as well. Like, they just follow such an arc that you just know what's going to happen every time. And there are rom-coms that play with the form a bit and aren't as predictable, but this one, they just feel it very, very popcorny. Having said that, like we say, there are some great moments in this film, and but despite knowing, relatively, you think you know what's going to happen, how it happens is very sweet at points.
And of course, what differs this film from many of other rom-coms that we see, and of course Hugh's rom-coms up to this point, is the fact that we get to see his musical and dancing ability. And maybe we should start with the music, which I have to say is a lot better than people give him credit for. This is not an easy role to fulfill. I know he says in interviews and stuff that, auto-tune can make you sound brilliant, and he has no respect for the music industry now that he knows that you can literally just put voice tune. I mean, the D-Dogs album is... if you haven't listened to Diggory's own musical work, he is the D-Dog. Go and search it up on Spotify, you won't be disappointed. But Diggs, what did you think about his singing and sort of piano playing and guitar playing in this film?
I mean, I was completely blown away. When you watch a lot of these films and they're singing in it, you'll see them singing, you'll see them lip syncing, and they'll get someone else to sing the parts for them and stuff. And it was I was listening in, and I was like, hang on a minute, that's all diegetic, that's all Hugh. Like, Hugh's doing all of that, and I was so impressed. And so as soon as the film ended, I went and searched it up to see whether he sung all of his own bits, and he did. And I was so impressed with, he sounded brilliant. I loved his voice. It was, to be fair, speaking of A Star Is Born, it kind of reminded me of Bradley Cooper. I was like, blimey, mate, you've got some lungs on you. I had no idea.
I would personally compare him to a cross between Chris Martin and Elton John. That's what I get.
I mean, two absolute heavyweights of musical history, of just history.
And very like Elton John, he makes the music and he's got his lyricist.
Yeah, big time.
So
absolutely, just like that in that sense.
Of course, we've seen him in a couple of other films attempt his hand at music. Obviously, About a Boy, we see him sing Killing Me Softly, but I guess this is the first time we really see a full singing number. But yeah, I don't think I'm not sure he plays the piano. I'm not unconvinced by that. But then
Funny-
there's little bits that we do see him playing it.
Yeah, I think what I think I read was he learnt the little moments where he would have his hands and face in shot. He learnt little bits of the piano, so there were moments which were definitely him. Which again, even that I was impressed with. Yeah, like we've heard from people that have acted with Hugh, he does really go for it, and he makes sure that he puts everything into the role and makes sure he's the best that he can be, and there's no fault in that. And the fact that he went above and beyond he had a dancing teacher, a choreographer and dancing teacher. He had like lessons for his singing, and also he learned how to do the piano. It's like he's really he threw himself into the role. It's great.
Well, you're listening to Hugh Grant taking Hugh for granted on the radio. Hugh Grant taking Hugh for granted. Oh, the podcast show.
Well, before we move on to the dancing, maybe just a quick word on Sophie Fisher or Drew Barrymore's performance in this film, because we spend a lot of time on this podcast slightly bashing some of the female characters in Hugh's rom-coms. But for me, Sophie really, really was inspiring in this film.
Yeah, I think that also was helped by the writing of the character. She, unlike, we've talked many times, sometimes these ladies unfortunately aren't fully fleshed out. She seemed interesting, engaging, but not perfect, and also batty and funny and like a bit crazy, and that was really fun.
This film allowed development of her character, and what was quite nice about it is that we only have, unlike some of the other rom-coms like For When He's in a Funeral and Bridget Jones, etc., where we have so many characters and storylines trying to be put into one 2-hour film. Here we basically have two main characters who are allowed to develop, and there's lots of scenes where it's like just one-on-one. So long scenes drawn out where it's just them playing the piano and singing, etc. So I think that really, you can really sort of get behind Hugh's character and Sophie's character in this film. And yeah, I don't know, she's also, I think this was also her debut in a music film, but she does, I looked up, have some musical connections. She was dating the Strokes' drummer for 5 years. Actually, during this film, I think she was dating him, and is the godmother to Kurt Cobain's daughter.
Oh my word. Wow.
Look out the window. Look out the window. Look out the window. It's Hugh Grant in a Pret.
This could be a good moment to then drop back into the dancing, because this is a bit of a highlight of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? Hugh Grant actually, I realised today, Hugh Grant actually danced in loads more movies. And I feel like we're talking about his dancing a lot. One of the last films we talked about, Bitter Moon, he was dancing in that as well. He dances in this. He danced in Florence Foster Jenkins. Obviously dances in Love Actually. So it's interesting. I feel like for a man that, again, lamented on this film having to do a lot of the dancing at first, he does have to, unfortunately, do a lot of boogieing in his movies. What did you think, though, about his, incredible dancing?
Yeah, like you said, for a man who says he doesn't like dancing, he's very sort of keen on actually showing off some of his moves. I mean, I guess we see a bit of a progression from the Love Actually moves in here, I think, because you get a few of the bum twerks, you get a few of the finger pointings, you get a few of the like off to the side things, but this is a little bit more polished, and I just love the fact that he's got this like adoring female crowd in front of him, and he's sort of thrusting his hips with his like frill shirt and white shoes on. Well, it's just brilliant. I love it. It's
so good. I'm not gonna lie, his hips were really working overtime. He's doing some like he's using his hips to more than, dare I say, more than Shakira in this film, and his
hips don't lie, baby.
Indeed. Absolutely. I think that lyric was written about Hugh in this film, and I think his crotch thrusts are honestly incredible, and they are plentiful. So if you think that sounds good, stick music and lyrics on, and also make sure no one's around, and you're gonna have a great time. It's honestly fantastic.
Just a meaningless kiss. We knew it was wrong, but we couldn't resist. Just a meeting, let's get still up and in love with you.
Girls, tell me the truth. Are these pants too tight?
So maybe a couple of tidbits that I want to just touch on were firstly the character of Rhonda. Rhonda is Sophie's sister, who is, I guess, a sort of guardian in a way. I think she's 7 years older than her, and she just so happens that she's a huge Alex Fletcher fan, and always has been. Is incredibly excited when she finds out that her sister has been working with Alex. And I just thought that she epitomized perfectly what it means to be if we're saying so, a hooligan.
Nice. Love that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that I'm so glad that you brought her up, because when I was watching this film, I was really drawn to her character, and now I think you've illuminated why. It's because she's a proper Hugh Grant fan. Rhonda in that universe would listen to Taking Hugh for Granted. She loves it. The moment it's so great when we first meet her, and Drew Barrymore comes in, and she's like, "Oh, I've met this guy, and he wants me to write these lyrics," and she's like, "I'm going out tonight," and it's just that moment where you just it was so perfect, it was so unexpected, so well delivered, and she was just, I couldn't take my eyes off her as well. I think she did a really good performance, and it's often, secondary characters, it's hard, sometimes it's hard for them to state their claim, but not only did she play this sort of stereotype crazed fan really well, she was so funny. Little moments like that was great. She kind of, whenever she was on screen, for me, she stole the show.
Way Back Into Love, Oscar's version, take 1. Oh crap, Hugh, I'm getting so nervous. You'll be fine, just use your normal nice voice I've heard so much of in the last 3 days. So will you come on our podcast if I sing this song with you? No. Well, that's awkward. Anyway. I was living with this anger in my head. I was sleeping with this passion in my bed. He's been slandered for so long. So we started this pod so the haters can jog on. I've been hiding all my hopes and dreams away, just in case we get you on the pod someday. Fans have wondered for some time how you haven't won an Oscar's a scandal in our minds. All I wanna do is find a way back into love. I can't make it, Hugh, without a way back into love.
Come on the podcast, Hugh.
I've been tweeting at you almost every day, but you haven't seemed to seem to my dismay. I know that you're out there. One day we'll chat to you someplace, somewhere. All I wanna do is find a way back into love. I can make it, Hugh, without a way back into love.
One thing I might like to mention is, and this might be my issue with just rom-coms in general, maybe because I'm a bit of a cynic at heart, or as Hugh Grant himself in interviews and stuff likes to bring up, he always says it's his Englishness. But maybe I'm just cynical, but sometimes I think it could be just rom-coms, it could be Marc Lawrence's films or his writing, but it takes me a little while to get into it. The moment when, let's say, for instance, there's that scene where Hugh Grant has to write this piece of music for this massive artist, and they get in this lyricist to help him, and the lyricist is, he's written all this weird shit about a witch and stuff. He suddenly gets the scene, if you were to read it and you watch it, this guy gets really angry all of a sudden because and Drew Barrymore's offering up her lyrics instead, and they're obviously better, even though she's just there to water the plants. But it's this weird scene where it just feels this lyricist guy gets angry very quickly and flounces off very quickly. And also, it's kind of difficult in this film. The lyrics that she offers up didn't do anything for me. But you're never going to please everyone with these things. So I think it's me being a grumpy bastard. But did you feel any of that? I just feel like it takes like 20 or 30 minutes for me to really get into the groove of it.
Well, there's a reason why this film is not seen by many as a sort of absolute classic film. And I think it's kind of those sort of things that you picked up on is a reason why. I mean, for me, I really enjoyed the film.
Fantastic.
I had a great time watching it. But when you associate Hugh and rom-coms, it's obviously not one of the first ones you think of. And I think it's because, like you said, it's slightly predictable, and there's a lot of things where you're just kind of like, yeah, that's probably like not that. Either not that believable, or just like, again, a bit predictable and a bit maybe a little bit slow paced. And I think one of the criticisms is that Marc Lawrence's writing in places could be improved. So I think you definitely picked up on something there for sure. Yeah, absolutely. What I would say about Marc Lawrence, though, and this is really sweet, is so Dance With Me Tonight, the song that Hugh sings for his encore, was actually written by Marc Lawrence's son, IRL. In real life, which is really sweet from Marc Lawrence. I really like that. It kind of shows that he's like a cool, nice family guy, because in one of his other films that Hugh Grant also stars in, The Rewrite, The Rewrite is loosely based on a fictional film called Paradise Misplaced, all about angels and heaven and stuff. And that is stories that Marc Lawrence himself used to tell to his son to calm him down in real life as well. So it's those little moments, even though they're not things that you would pick up on just watching the film, but when you do a little bit of research about it afterwards, it is really sweet. So I do want to cut Marc Lawrence some slack, because that's the sort of thing that, when you're looking for little Easter eggs, or you're going into as much detail as we are when we watch these films and research them, it is really sweet to see that. So I'm not going to completely write off his writing. Yeah, I mean, clearly Hugh sees something in his writing. I mean, apart from Richard Curtis, Marc Lawrence is pretty much the guy he's turned to next, and sort of, I guess, Richard was the man from the sort of basically the 90s, early 2000s, and since then it seems like he's gone on to Marc Lawrence. So Hugh obviously is a man who can now pick and choose his films. So he obviously sees something in Marc Lawrence's writing, and while his rom-coms are at times a little bit sort of predictable and not quite as successful probably as Richard Curtis as rom-coms, they still do the job, so fair play to them. And I think Hugh says it as well. I think the element is it's funny, and I think Hugh's characters consistently, regardless of whether the films are good or not, Hugh's characters in Marc Lawrence's films are funny. Before we end, there were just a couple more things that I wanted to touch on. The first of which, the more and more Hugh Grant films I watch, the more and more I pick up on Hughisms, as we say. And there's another one two more I wanted to pick up in here. And they're very linked. Maybe it's because his character is called Fletcher, and he's also called Fletcher in The Gentleman. Yes. But he keeps on doing this thing with his hands where he strokes his chin, which he does a lot in The Gentleman, and also the finger wag. He goes like this with his finger. Obviously, I'm being an idiot again. You can't see this, but he like wags his finger and strokes his chin. I don't know if you picked up on that, Diggory, or there's anything else that you've picked up in recent watchings that you see in future. We've spoken about moments. I think you're absolutely right about the when he strokes his chin, and it sort of reminds me as well when we talked recently about him sort of baring his teeth when he's feeling a bit awkward. That I think reared its ugly little head again in this film. I think you're absolutely right, and also I'm so glad you picked up on him being called Alex Fletcher in this film and being called Fletcher in the Gentleman, because I was just thinking this universe that we might have to make links to. This could well be like Fletcher could actually have could be. In The Gentleman could be this character, but just years down the line, where he's left all this pop star stuff behind and become this weird, seedy reporter. Cool, sweet, excellent. Right, should we close it up? Yeah, I think so.
Taking he for granted, taking he for granted, taking he for granted. What did you think, lads? Were they taking you for granted?
So, it's that time again. Oscar, music and lyrics. Is this film taking you for granted?
Diggory, I have to say that I'm a massive, massive fan of this film. Out of the films that we've watched recently, there's been a few that I've struggled to get my teeth into. I've criticised a few big ones out there, and I know that some of our fans out there will probably be thinking I'm the bad cop of our duo. But I really enjoyed this film. I'm a bit of a sucker for musicals. I'm a bit of a sucker for good, catchy music, and this really hit the spot for me. I was really impressed and quite sort of stunned, really, by how good Hugh's dancing and his singing was. And if there's a film that you just, it's not that long, and you just have a spare couple of hours, it really is a good one, and I think is one of the better films in his 2000s era of films. So I'm going to say that no, we're not taking Hugh for granted, and this is a great Hugh Grant film.
Very good.
How about yourself?
Well, maybe it's a role reversal for today for us. Maybe I'll be the bad cop today. I don't know whether I'm going to be full-on bad cop. The badge isn't coming off and being thrown out the window. I'm still very much operating within the law. Maybe I'm taking this good cop, bad cop metaphor a bit too far. I think Hugh, we see a good performance from Hugh. I think we see, like you say, I love the singing. It's an aspect to him we don't think we've seen before or since. I really like that. I think the dancing is fantastic. And I think he plays this role very, very well. I just think that I struggle maybe to get as on board with some of the writing and the story beats that do seem so trodden on by this point and so overdone. Having said that, though, this film, for a popcorn film, flies by, and it does wash over you quite nicely. So I'm going to say as well, this film is not taking Hugh for granted.
Fantastic. Well, it's another one in the can, another one that I'm sure our fans will enjoy. And as ever, we really appreciate your support.
Another one in the can. Thank you so much, as ever, for listening. Keep spreading the word, the good word of Hugh, and then also the podcast. And stay safe, everyone. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye. For copyright reasons, the producers of Taking Hugh for Granted would like to state that this podcast is in no way associated with the actor Hugh John Mungo Grant, nor does it endorse his views or represent him in any way. We simply review Mr. Grant's films and hope to shine light upon some of the lesser-known classics from his illustrious career. Hugh, if you're listening, we hope you approve.